comes to doing bad things, Gade is an expert. He doesn't need any prompting from him. The town they lived in was called Baishalan Town. It was a large town located on a major transportation route and had all kinds of trades, making it comparable to a small city. Alan loved to hang out in the town's bar, where, in addition to the regular local drunks, adventurers from other places would occasionally go in to relax, making it a lively place. Old Blacksmith Tate was a well-known figure in Whitewood Town. There are two reasons why he became famous. First, his superb craftsmanship was no less than that of many craftsmen in Eagle Peak City. Second, he had a violent temper and often got into conflicts with people, then used his blacksmith hammer to beat people half paralyzed, almost causing their deaths several times. Recently, Old Tate has gained a third reason for his fame. That was his beautiful wife, who was said to have slept with half of Eagle Peak City and whose promiscuity was outrageous. It's safe to say that if she gets any illness, no man or woman in the entire town of Baishalan and the villages below will be spared. Old Tate bought his beautiful wife from a brothel in Eagle Peak City for a hefty sum, and she was also his only nemesis. Old Tate was a soldier in his youth, a ruthless killer. He could have become an officer, but because of his violent temper, he was sent back after assaulting his superior officer while drunk. Imperial military law was extremely strict. Assaulting a superior officer was punishable by death, yet he was only discharged from the army. It's clear that his contributions were truly significant. Although Old Tate was old and had a limp, no one dared to argue with him. Only his beautiful wife could control him. Old Tate knew that his beautiful wife was having affairs with many men in Whitewood Town. But he always forgave his wife, but never the man who had sex with her. As a result, countless men nearly died under that black iron hammer. It wasn't that Old Tate was soft-hearted. It was just that although he had a fiery temper, he was very shrewd and knew how to keep things in check. Murder is punishable by death, but it's much easier to deal with if you only cause the other party to be paralyzed. Moreover, if the other party is at fault first, the town's sheriff will usually not pursue the matter because of Old Tate's influence. Because of the existence of healing magic, as long as a powerful light mage can be hired, even if a man's organ is smashed to pieces, it can grow back. The problem is that people in small towns like theirs can't afford to hire such light mages. Therefore, Baishalan Town is gradually turning into a village of eunuchs and a village of widows living in poverty. To be honest, Alan didn't actually have an affair with that woman. They just flirted and exchanged glances. But Old Tate doesn't care about all that. If he were that reasonable, he wouldn't be so famous. If Alan gets caught by Old Tate, his fate is predictable. Perseus went to Winnie's room. Winnie opened her eyes groggily, saw it was him, and instinctively spread her legs apart again. "What are you doing? Show some restraint." Winnie was fully awake. She sat up and yawned without any embarrassment. "I'm so sleepy. Why did you have to disturb my rest?" "Want to see a good show?" Perseus said. "If you don't go, I'll just take Ivisa and Katie." Katie had already stood up and come to Perseus's side. "What good show?" Brothers turned into sisters. Perseus managed a weak laugh. "How strange, but it sounds quite interesting." Winnie became excited and jumped up, ready to rush out the door. "At least put on a robe before going out, right?" Perseus pulled her back. Chapter 121, Eldest Sister Alan. Gade didn't expect that flattering Perseus now would make him let him off the hook. He simply wanted to humiliate himself in this way to lessen Perseus's resentment towards him. Dignity can be regained one day, but if you lose your life, then you truly have nothing left. Even if Perseus hated him, he had already knelt down and served him like a slave. Surely he wouldn't kill him? He would eat shit without hesitation, as long as he could save his life. It would be incredibly easy to get him to frame Alan. Even if Perseus hadn't said anything, he wouldn't have let Alan off the hook. Gade was even more motivated. Everyone in Whitewood knows where Old Tate's house is. It's not in a remote location, but many people would rather take a detour than pass through it. Even in broad daylight, the area is eerily quiet. The blacksmith workshop was right next door, but the fire in the furnace had long since gone out. Old Tate has no children, and he gave up gambling and prostitution long ago. He just likes to have a drink now and then. He has saved enough money from being a blacksmith for so many years that ordinary people can't afford to hire him anymore. He is essentially retired, but many adventurers still come to him to have weapons and armor custom made. Old Tate doesn't just agree to anything because someone has money. The other party not only has to be willing to spend money, but also has to be good-tempered and polite. Otherwise, no matter how much money you offer, he'll still wave his hammer and chase you away. Although he stayed at home most of the time, he still couldn't control his wife. This is the tragedy of many men. No matter how powerful they are outside, they can't control their wives at home. Old Tate's house was wide open, and inside it was dark and gloomy, like a cave. Gade stood in front of the door, looking inside, unsure of what to do next. He had long heard of Old Tate's volatile temper, not to mention a mere empty-headed aristocrat like him. Even the real scions of wealthy families in the capital would be just as irritable when they came to Old Tate. He was a little worried that he would get beaten up before he could even say a word. Just as they were trembling with fear, the darkness inside the room shifted, and a tall, muscular shadow slowly appeared. Before Gade even saw anyone, he felt himself being stared at fiercely by a pair of eyes. Old Tate's silhouette gradually emerged, until finally he stood completely in front of him, looking down at him. Old Tate was indeed old. His hair was gray, and his face was covered with scars and wrinkles, but his eyes were still as sharp as a hawk's. Even though his back was slightly hunched, he was still nearly 2 meters tall, and his whole body was made of solid muscles. Gade swallowed hard, his face turning pale. "What are you doing standing at my door? You don't look like you want me to forge iron for you. Or are you checking if I'm here?" Old Tate took a swig from his bottle, his eyes fixed on Gade the whole time. Like many men with beautiful wives, Old Tate was extremely suspicious, seeing every man as someone trying to seduce his wife. While others might simply be paranoid, he had a legitimate reason. Because his wife is a notorious womanizer who not only likes to seduce men, but also likes to be seduced by men. From little boys who haven't even grown all their hair to old men who have trouble walking, they eat everything, regardless of height, weight, or race. They're not picky eaters at all. Faced with Gade's silence, Tate's aura grew increasingly dangerous. If this continued, his nose would be flattened by the latter's punch in no more than 5 seconds. I'll come to find my older brother." Gade was filled with trepidation. "What?" Old Tate frowned. "How did you end up at my house looking for your older brother?" "Don't misunderstand. I'm sorry. I took the wrong turn. I'll leave right away. Gade bowed and scraped. "Wait." Old Tate's expression twisted in a grimace. "Is something going on between your brother and my wife?" Old Tate isn't stupid, but unfortunately, Gade is not one of them either. If Gade were to immediately say that Alan and his wife's relationship was unusual, Old Tate would think that Gade was using Alan as a pawn, and instead of causing trouble for Alan, Gade himself would suffer the consequences. But if what he says is inexplicable, disjointed, and contradictory, Old Tate will use his imagination to make up a story that he himself prefers. The credibility of what others say is incomparable to that of what one thinks up oneself. If you tell someone something, even if you explain it to them to the very end, they will at most only barely believe it. But if it's something he came up with himself, even if you tell him not to believe it, he'll believe it without a doubt. For example, now Old Tate believes it. "I don't know anything. I really don't know anything," Gade said, trembling. Seeing his pathetic state, Old Tate snorted. "It's okay if you don't know. Just tell me where your older brother is, and I'll go ask him myself." He said he wanted to come to town to relax. Without a word, Old Tate turned and went inside, taking out his eating utensils. A black hammer that gleams with light, a divine weapon that strikes fear into the hearts of countless men. Gade felt a dull ache in his lower body just from looking at it for a second. He had certainly heard of the legend of this hammer. "This is none of your business. Get lost." Old Tate picked up his hammer, and without even closing the door, limped toward his own stable. Gade didn't say anything and quickly slipped away. He couldn't wait to see what happened next. When it comes to the place that the men in town like to go most, it's definitely the Birch Bar. The wine here is exceptional, and there are also many attractive female companions. As long as you order the drinks they recommend, you can hold them while drinking and soaking your fingers until they are swollen. For a little more money, you can take them home for one night. The bar was always packed. When Old Tate, carrying a hammer and limping, stormed into the bar like a black whirlwind, the previously noisy atmosphere instantly fell silent. Many cups fell to the ground at the same time, making a crisp sound, and many men looked at Old Tate's fierce appearance, as if his buttocks could turn iron ingots into iron sheets. Who's going to be unlucky today? Everyone was thinking the same thing silently. Where's that bastard Alan Perrin? With a fierce gaze sweeping across the room, Old Tate asked in a harsh voice. Call. Countless men breathed a sigh of relief. They had escaped another calamity. In order to get rid of this plague as soon as possible and continue soaking their fingers, they no longer cared about so-called male friendship. He just left. The men all spoke in unison. Old Tate spat and turned to rush out of the bar again. Mounting the horse he had carelessly tossed outside, Old Tate turned and headed straight for Luke Village. The parent family's limited fame harmed Alan. After drinking 2 beers, Alan slowly drove the carriage home, his breath carrying a faint smell of alcohol, which improved his mood, which had been soured by Gade's return. He would have drunk even more if he weren't afraid of looking like an alcoholic in front of Winnie. So he only had a small drink, and that was it. The carriage also carried various flowers he had bought for Winnie, so she would be satisfied with whatever she liked. Just thinking of Winnie's dignified and elegant figure made him smile wistfully, imagining her beautiful smile as he presented the flowers. With love, life is beautiful no matter what. Suddenly a tall horse passed by him, but he didn't pay any attention. However, the horse suddenly blocked the road, completely obstructing the country lane. Alan quickly pulled on the reins to avoid crashing into it. He wanted to unleash a torrent of curses, but upon seeing the person on horseback, he swallowed back the not-so-clean words. "It's Old Tate. Kit, what's going on between you and my wife? Explain yourself." Old Tate glared, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Me and your wife? We're just ordinary friends," Alan said, bewildered. Although he had many girlfriends, Old Tate's wife was really just a friend to him. They just chatted and expressed their appreciation for each other. That woman's reputation was so bad that even though he longed for women, he didn't want to easily give his virginity to a slut who had been with many men. Although he did almost succumb to temptation several times. But the thought of Old Tate's hammer brought him back to his senses. Even though he hadn't done anything shameful, Old Tate still came looking for him, leaving Alan both scared and aggrieved. "Friends," Old Tate grinned menacingly. "You a grown man, a friend with my wife." Old Tate dismounted and limped onto the horse. The road was blocked, and there was no way to turn around. He was afraid of killing someone if he tried to ram the road with his horse. Just as Alan was caught in a dilemma, Old Tate came to his side. Old Tate reached out and pulled him off the carriage. Alan screamed, "I really didn't do anything with your wife. I didn't. Someone must have framed me. Tell me who it is. Tell me who it is. Whether you did it or not, I've been fed up with you for a long time. I heard you're always seducing young women and wives, and now you've even tried to seduce my wife. Even if you haven't done it now, you'll probably do it in the future, so I might as well take precautions. Besides, you say you didn't do it, so you didn't do it?" Old Tate sneered. "I didn't. If you don't believe me, bring your wife here so we can confront her face to face. Who knows which random guy she's with right now? I'll deal with you first before I go after her." Old Tate's iron-like hands left Alan with no chance to resist. He dragged Alan onto the grass and forced him to lie down. Alan knew exactly what was going to happen next and struggled desperately, so desperate that he wished he could die on the spot. Old Tate got impatient and punched Alan, who instantly fell to the ground. "Please, believe me," Alan cried out, his nose gushing blood and tears streaming down his face. Old Tate remained unmoved, gave a ferocious grin, raised the iron hammer in his hand, and brought it down heavily. If he didn't hold back, this hammer blow could have smashed a bloody hole in Alan's groin. But Old Tate had a clear target, and his hammer blows were as precise as surgery, ensuring he wouldn't hurt anyone else. He was experienced, and his skills were absolutely trustworthy. Everything happened in an instant. That earth-shattering hammer blow ended, and the world seemed to have been muted. Alan didn't scream in agony. On the contrary, he didn't utter a single sound. His body began to wriggle on the ground like a caterpillar, trembling as he did so. He would arch his back like an earthworm from time to time, then lower himself in a twisted posture, repeating this over and over, as if he were performing a very strange dance. He didn't utter a sound. Severe pain can cause shock, which can lead to death if not treated promptly. Simply put, a person can be tortured to death. Old Tate stood there for a while, making sure Alan wouldn't die, before walking away contentedly. Alan was left to continue his silent dance on the ground. He didn't utter a sound of pain, but his whole body was screaming with agony. Ivisa, Katie, and Winnie were clearly visible in the bushes. All three of them looked at Perseus at the same time. "Sigh, why do men have to make things difficult for each other?" "Winnie, that old man is very skilled. He's a master," Katie said. Ivisa said nothing, but glanced at a certain part of Perseus's body. Perseus was already in enough pain seeing Alan like this, but that one look from her almost made him faint from fright.